Okay, mute your phone, your computers, please. Good morning. We're learning now. We're going to start learning the third chapter of Kuntris HaChinuch, Klolei HaChinuch V'Adrocha, the principles of education and guidance from the Frierdiker Rebbe. We're on page 27 in the Hasidic Heritage series. Just to recap what the Rebbe explained earlier, that there's a difference between Chinuch and Hadracha, and Limud and Hayra. Limud and Hayra means a teacher. A teacher who teaches, and Hayra means he instructs. And it's very different than a guide and a mechanech and an educator. And the difference that he says over here, the primary difference, he said several. I don't want to repeat the whole chapter. It's important. It's a very important chapter for the rest of the country. So if you haven't really studied it, you should. But basically the difference is that the teacher teaches information. And if the information is not understood or understood a little, or, it doesn't really make a big difference to the student because it's very, very slippery slope. Okay? So this is what he said in the previous chapter, and this is why this kuntris, this essay, is dedicated to this, because at the time in 1898, the students that were in the Lubavitch Yeshiva were Talmidei Chachamim, but character-wise they had flaws like everyone else. And however, the flaws that are by Talmidei Chachamim are a lot worse, as the Gemara says. So therefore, the Rasha, the previous Rebbe, the Manahel, the principal administrator of the yeshiva, was beside himself when the two main mashpiyim, Reb Hendel and Reb Groinen, came to him. Reb Hendel was supervising the students in Lubavitch, and Reb Groinen was supervising the students in a city called Zembin. So they came to him and they said, we're not being effective. We're not being effective, and we need help. We need help. So the Frierdiker Rebbe went to the Rebbe Rashab, his father, and he asked him for help. And he said, here is an essay that I wrote about educational ideas. I'm sorry, here are letters that I wrote 10 years before in 1888 about educational ideas. Take it, study it, develop it, and write it up in the form of a essay which will be helpful to these two mashpiyim, and subsequently helpful to the Talmidim. That's the chronological development of this kuntris. So the whole idea of the kuntris was to refine that, to teach mechanchim and counselors how to appropriately educate students so that they are less coarse in their midos. This is not about knowing another Masechta or another Maimer. That's not what kuntris was written for. I think I told you the story, or some of you, that in Lubavitch there was a student named Avram Eliyahu Plotkin. And he came, and he was a very big Talmud Chacham. My father-in-law, Shalom, had him as a Rosh Hashiva in Samarkand in the mid-1940s. And he would always rave about him, how he was such a goyin, and yet he was able to explain so clearly a Plat Gemara. Yes, Hillel.
Where is...
You turned off your screen. You turned off your thing. What?
Where is Samarkand?
In Kazakhstan.
Okay. Where's Kazakhstan? Okay.
The geography you'll have to find on a globe. Anyway, someone's radio's on. You understand? I don't know whose it is. Or Yaakov, turn off, mute yourself. When Stalin came in and he made all the tsaras for the Yidden, they ran to a safe haven, which was Kazakhstan. And the bigger cities, they were known as Samarkand and Tashkent. And that became a refuge for many Yidden, Polish Yidden, Litvish, Hasidish, the Sephardim. Everyone was a hodgepodge because there was safety. They wouldn't be persecuted. And they set up and the Sephardish Yidden that were there from way back already were, they had shuls and Talmud Torahs, there was an establishment there. But that's another story. Maybe another time we'll talk more about that. I just wrote about it. I just printed a book called Chabad and Sephardim, and I went back to the time of the Rashab. Some of his Hasidim were asked to come from Eretz Yisrael. They went to raise funds for Hebron. But while they were there, the community wanted to have a real Rav, and they stayed for several years. Rebbe Chaim Chesky and Medini, and several others. Anyway, it's another parsha, another story. But going back to this story is that this Bocher, Avram Eliyahu Plotkin, so he was taka a very big guy, but he came in with a gaiva. The more you learn many times, the more gaiva you have. You feel, you're the kingpin, And the Frierdiker Rebbe saw this, but as a good educator, he saw that he has here a diamond. The diamond needs to be polished. So he spoke to his father about it, and it was decided that for Pesach, the Bacharim baked matzahs, right? So they decided they're going to give him the toughest job in the house. And I think it was the rolling the pins and cleaning the pins. It was, for him, it was something that, what Avodas Perach is. It says in Shemos, the Yidden had Avodas Perach. What does Rashi say? Anoshim, men were doing women's work, and women were doing men's work. And Rashi says that's the meaning of Avodas Perach. When you're unfamiliar, it's not your type of work, you weren't raised to do this, it's very difficult, even though maybe it's not so difficult, but for you it's very difficult. So here he was, Avram Elia Plotkin was a Talmud Chacham learning day and night, and here he's rolling pins and he's schwitzing, and it's like hard for him. And the Frierdiker Rebbe says that Pesach, I think it was 1906, in the early 1900s, it literally, he said after Pesach he came back to the Beis Medrash, he was a different bacher. The gaiva was broken. The gaiva was broken because how can the Rebbe give me such a job? I should be standing and checking the matzahs like, I'm a Rav, a rabbi. Now the Rebbe says, you clean those pins from the dough for the 18 minutes so you can use it again or whatever the case. So it broke him. The Avodah, the physical labor shattered his gaiva. And he came out a new bacher. I'm saying this, the story is because when we talk about hadracha, chinuch and hadracha, these are educational tools. And a mechanech has to know when to apply them, how to apply them, how much of it to apply, and this is what this kuntras is all about. Let's go on now to page 27 to Ois Gimel. Any questions before I continue? Before we start? Okay. B'koyres ha'adam b'yachas la'atzmai v'achsharosai. The caption, the title reads here, man's self-examination and preparation. Kol adam hachofetz b'chayei avodah. Any person that desires a life of labor. Now, again, you understand from his opening words that a life of labor is desirable. We shouldn't avoid it. We should look for a life of labor because a life of labor is healthy for us. Tzorech loshes daitoi v'liboi levaker es atzmoi b'chol anfei chayav hamusoroyim. He has to examine himself in every aspect of his ethical life. Ki hasoynei hachi godel shel adam, for the greatest enemy of man, who avas atzmoi, is self-love. Haperois, that is unbridled. It comes from the word pera adam, right? You've heard that adam, pera adam. Man is born a wild donkey, pera. So unbridled, prois. Mitzad hatulda. This avas atzmoi, says the Rebbe, is natural to mankind from birth. Shehu chumri of vegas. Three things. He's materialistic, he's dense, and he's coarse. That's it. Yes, Hillel.
So we're talking here the spiritual meaning of the word avodah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. I mean, it also happens to be that when you work, it really makes you into a mensch. But yeah, here he means avodah spiritually. Yes, you're innocent.
Self-love is very, very important for development. If a person doesn't have self-love, they're not going to want to preserve themselves, and they don't have an ability to relate to other people.
Okay, turn your mic off because I have background noise and I'll talk. We're not talking here about healthy self-esteem, Yonason. We're talking about a self-love that's not associated with God, only with man. If it's only humanistic, it's not healthy. It needs to be godly and spiritual, and then the self-love becomes godly love. So, of course, we're not talking about self-deprecation. The Chafetz Chaim, the famous story with the person who gave the Chafetz Chaim a ride in a car, a taxi, whatever, and didn't know it's the Chafetz Chaim, and he was talking against himself. So the Chafetz Chaim later he came and he met the Chafetz Chaim, and he was so and the Chafetz Chaim says self-deprecation is also a form of lashon hara. So yes, if from that perspective, Yonason, if that's the self-love, okay, yeah, I agree with you, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about a person. Adam Roya, there's the Gemara, right? Yaakov, Adam Roya, a person sees all other people's faults, chutz menigei atzmai, except his own blemishes, his own faults. Self-love. And the Rebbe says that this is metulda. You're born this way, and unless you work on yourself, you will be stuck in this self-love. Next paragraph. Avas atzmoi hi achas mikleim nusa shel hayetzer hara. More so, this self-love is one of the tools of the yetzer hara, of the evil inclination. Hu ha'ma'aver es seichel ha'adam. The yetzer hara blinds man's intellect, umetamtem es liboy, and clogs his heart. Soisem es einav, closes his eyes, v'oitem es ozdov, and stuffs his ears, milahovin, from understanding es chesrei noisov, ushkiyos an oinoisov, from realizing his deficiencies and his mistakes of iniquities. Because the style of man who walks in his jolly way, and he feels he's right in all matters, including his transgressions, because in his own, he's up, even in his inherent humanity, it's obscured by the self-love. In other words, there are certain things that humanity would dictate. Forget about spirituality. Humanity would dictate that you don't behave that way. And why is he behaving that way? Because the self-love covers up the situation, stuffs up the ears, closes the eyes, and everything else that he said here, and clogs the heart. So you become despondent, totally despondent. Verstoppt. In Yiddish, the word is verstoppt. Next paragraph. V'nivar bidas le'odem ha'mayla beina atzmai. Self-love makes the fool and the one who is silly, ignorant, turns him into a great man in his own eyes. Oh, you're so great. He thinks to himself, I'm so great. Es otum hamoyach lemaskil, and it causes the mind to be clogged from comprehending and seeing the truth and understanding the truth. Es hageya le'onov, sorry. It makes him think that gaiva that he has, he's really an onov. Es ha'mechuer, something that is ugly, lifei toyar, he makes him think it's beautiful. Es ha'achzor, something that is cruel, leval mides yishoris, makes him think that these are proper character, midas. Es ha'mekane, someone who's has jealousy, l'toivai, he has a good eye. Ukiyotze bezeh, enough? and many other examples. Yes, Hillel.
This word atum in the second line, atum hamoach lemaskil, is that the word tum, like the word metamtem?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, like that. Okay.
What does metamtem mean, Hillel? What's your translation?
Like to clog up.
Yeah.
That's the way I avoid the corson.
Right. Clog. Timtum hamoach. So the Rebbe over here in this paragraph elaborates with different words the result, the negative result of avas atzmai. Next paragraph. Kama min ashtus v'hivoren yesh b'zeh. What folly and blindness there is from this. Asher ha'ovil lo yek lahaksil. The fool mocks the stupid. What does that mean? Otum hamoyach lanivra midas. The clogging of the mind, lanivra midas, to be, it takes the mind. Hageya lagas haruach hamuchur lamazum. He's using all the words in the previous paragraph. He's saying basically that the shtus of self-love causes a foolishness and a blindness that all of these negative character traits and issues are highlighted and put on a pedestal and looked at as in a good way. V'chein b'shari balimumin hamusorim mibli l'schashiv klal limumi atzma. And all other blemishes, ethical blemishes, hamusorim, ethical blemishes, mibli l'schashiv klal, without at all taking into consideration, imumi atzmam, the very core deficiency of the issue itself. In other words, gaiva is negative. So don't try to convince yourself that gaiva is good. It's not. There is, the Gemara says in Soiter, a Talmud Chacham needs shminis shebeshminis. It might have used the word gaiva there, but what it means is healthy self-esteem. But arrogance is arrogance. Now, along comes a person or people, and they say to this fellow, my friend, your self-love is so all over the place that it's really causing you issues in this area and that area and all that. He has ma'orerim. He's being awakened, aroused to wake up from his sleep. Hine yimtzum meyos hisnatzlus. He will find hundreds of excuses. uta'amim kumusim, and esoteric reasons. Al kol mum v'chesarim. You know why I have this negative fault, this issue? I got it from my father. You know why I have this? I got it from my rabbi. I got it from my friend. I got it from my community. I got it because I was raised in a certain way. And he has all kinds of excuses why he has the chesaron, the deficiency. Kito ha'ma'ire l'chashroi lemum v'chesaron. What did they conclude? Kito ha'ma'ire l'chashroi lemum v'chesaron. And he says, the person who has this deficiency, not realizing it is a deficiency and is a negative, blames the person who comes to him and says, hey, you have this issue, you're making a mistake. If I have an issue, it's not mine, it's because of my father, my mother, my community, my rabbi, blah, 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 blah. And you're making a mistake. Umehem gam ka'elu asher mumeyem beltim. And the Rebbe says, next page 28, there are those that have such open and obvious negativity and characters, visirchoinam. And sirchoinam means it means a smell, but it's so obvious their character flaw. Oiver bli gvul. It's like you can't. It's what do they say in Hebrew? Me'alo me'ever, right? Oiver bli gvul. It's like oiver kol gvul. Sorry, oiver kol gvul. It goes over all boundaries. It's all over the place. Hine be'ashmas avas atzmon. But due to the ashmas fault of self-love, these people who are blemished this way, they sin against the choicest of creation, that man created, which is Hua Adam man. They're going against klapi nishmasam, their soul, lahariv ois, to expand their chutzpah, ulahoyis lahamid atzmam, and they have the audacity to place themselves besug in a category that's l'mayla min habikoros, beyond criticism. You can't criticize me. You know who I am. You know where I come from. You know what I have. I'm in a very different category. They put themselves in there, and it all comes from the same Nakuda that Rebbe is saying. It all comes from Avos Atzmai. Look at the next words, guys. You're going to like him. Oy v'oy. Oy v'voy. Oy v'voy. You've heard the expression? It's right here, second paragraph, page 29. Woe to the individuals. Lohem lebriyos halolu. To these individuals. Asher levad zois ki yichoytem heim. In addition to the fact that they themselves are sinners, loise kavona, they're sinners to the intent. Asher kadosh baruch hu hoyredes nishmoshem. Hashem lowered their soul meigra rama, from a lofty and exalted plateau, lebira mikta, mountain, all the way to a low valley. Hashem took the neshama from on high and sent it below. Beilam has in this world le'ovda, to serve him u'l'shamra, begin the kinyan amidas, to guard his mitzvahs also through the acquiring of midas tayvais. In addition to learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, keeping mitzvahs, Hashem wants you to acquire midas tayvais. So when a person says he's beyond fault and criticism and places himself in a category that's beyond that, he is sinning against the purpose why Hashem created him. In addition to this, asher me'avdim heima rachman litzlan eso ilu shehoya oilim b'maylas haruchiyah. In addition to this, they're losing the advantage, the ilui, that they would have this ascended b'maylas haruchiyah in spiritual matters. Uboyim al schorem ba'al madasi, and they would gain reward in the world to come for refining themselves. Hine oitza is in addition to this, asher nesharim heim alavos l'chet pasaylam. They remain disgraced and forever repugnant. So the Rebbe is saying, your calculation, you guy who has avas atzma, is so wrong and so ridiculous, because A, you're not doing what God created you to do, and B, you're squandering the spiritual aliyah that you could have from all this. Next paragraph. V'ashmat luyo, says the Rebbe, and this blame for all this is tluya ach verak be'avas atzmei hatul dosit, the natural love that the person loves themselves. And because of that, he covers up on everything. And a person who doesn't pay attention, doesn't make his heart and his mind pay attention, to criticize himself, check himself. He goes after the dictates of the heart, like an ox going out to be slaughtered, who just marches towards the slaughter, not understanding where he's going to, and ready to be shechted. Yuval uma'abed chas v'sholem, and he loses, God forbid, as chayav hamusarim, his ethical life, uvaruchtim, his spiritual life, and his human purpose, why he was created. Man's life on this earth. It's a mighty war between good and bad. Between the truth and falseness. Between Hano v'Hamaguna, what's beautiful really and what is disgusting. And during the time of a war, one of the ploys, one of the tactics, warfare tactics, the very keen inspection, an organized inspection that is necessary to recognize the tactics and ploys of the enemy. Even people who are friends, lovers, friends, one needs to be mashgiach, one needs to be careful and pay attention, with an open eye. Are they fulfilling their obligation? Help in being helpful to overcome the enemy. And it's understood how great the hashgacha, the supervision, this powerful supervision is needed. And the inspection, the very sharp inspection, over those who you really care for. Al-oyavim, on those who are your enemies. Ubefrat al-soina, more important is this hashgacha when it comes to a soina hamistate bebigdei oyev. An enemy whom cloaks himself in garments of a lover, someone who loves you. What the Rebbe says, avas atzmai. Avas atzmai is a soine, is an enemy. But he puts on these garments of, I just want the best. Umate es adam, and he fools man al kol tzad v'tzad on every step. Asher, next last paragraph, 229, al kain hinei isha chofetz b'chayim, a person who desires life, matimim lahashlichus asher gozra olav ashgocha al yoina. He wants life that corresponds to the shlichus, to the mission that from heaven was decreed upon him, to illuminate the world with the light of Torah, the candle of mitzvah, light of mitzvah. And Hashem does good to sustain him, parnasa, whatever he needs, with his mezainas, his food, haruchnim, spiritual food. Next page 31, based on the work that's upon him, the way you prepare yourself, says the Rebbe, to be a vessel, a healthy vessel, who al yedei habikoiris, it's through self-examination. That he should examine himself in his avodah and in his conduct. So this was a long paragraph with one nakuda, and the nakuda is, as he says at the beginning of 27 in the bold, bikoires ha'adam, after the Gimel, chapter 3, it says in the bold, bikoires ha'adam biyachas la'atzmai v'hachsharosai. Self-examination and preparation. And he says that, and he gives the mashal that when you're in an army and you have warfare and you have an enemy that's standing there, you have to be very keen and very sharp in recognizing what the enemy really wants to do and is doing and how he's doing it. And he says, we are in a constant battle. Hashem put us here, we have toiv v'ra, no and megune, beautiful and disgusting, good and bad. There's a constant ongoing battle. That's the gedder. That's the gedder of the world. That's the condition of the world is avodah. So when you talk about, someone says, I don't want to be an ovid. I don't want to be in battle. Well, my friend, if you're on earth and alive, as long as you're breathing, there's an avodah. I've told you the famous vart of the Kotzker, the holy Kotzker Rebbe. He was lying on his deathbed, and it was the last few moments before his neshama returned to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he said with his sharp witticism, as the Kotzker was known for, and he said, you know what I'm thinking about now? What are they going to say about me, the Kotzker, after I die? And when is he thinking about it? Moments before he dies. When you should be like, only with God. He's thinking about. Now, you understand, you're talking here about the Kotzker, the Heiliger, such a big tzaddik. This vart of the Kotzker is not anything different than what we're saying now, that we are in a perpetual struggle as long as we breathe and are alive. Till the last moment. And that's the point of that story. That here you are, your moments before your last moment, and what are you thinking about? What are they going to say about me after my death? All right? What are they going to write on my tombstone? Etc., etc. So the Rebbe says, get real, understand that humanity is such that there's a struggle, and b'meila, you have to know that in order to overcome and win that battle, you have to remove avas atzma, self-love. The way to do that, he's suggesting here, is through self-examination. as he will continue in the next paragraph, in the next few paragraphs, this is required on the mechanech and the madrich. Before you can get to teaching, to educating and guiding the student, the child, etc., you need to do self-examination on yourself. And when you examine yourself and you come out from being self-absorbed with the self, then you're a vessel to communicate that to the others, to the students. Yes, Yonason. I don't hear you.
Yeah, I don't understand how it's possible to make a self-examination by being completely objective with yourself. A person is normally subjected to himself. How is it possible to be objective with yourself?
The way to be objective is by having someone else help you be objective.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Then you need somebody to help you get out
Yes,
of yourself.
I've told, yes, Melech's people who you knew, our Mashpia in Morristown, when I went over to him when I was a Bacher in Yeshiva, and I said to him, I feel, this pride, because I'm doing everything right, So he said to me, and I said, I don't like it. I know it's not right. So he said to me, find yourself amongst the Bachurim here someone who will give you Musar. Yeah, and he meant it. That's the answer. So you're right. It's very hard. It's very hard or virtually impossible to know, but to know like what's the truth and to be objective. But Yonason, there's plenty of room to get to that point where then we need the outsider to confirm for us what is the real objectivity from etc. I think that for most people, the very initial steps of self-examination is something that is difficult. We struggle with. Who wants to look at themselves in the mirror? It's very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. And so you're right in what you're saying, but I believe it doesn't contradict what the Rebbe says here. The Rebbe is talking about, start self-examining, And yes, if you find that you're justifying everything, I'm right. I did this, I'm right. You know why I'm right? Because of this. And the Rebbe used the word before, meyes. He has hundreds of excuses he used, right? So then it's time to have someone else. And this touches upon the whole idea of having of a chavrusa, a friend, a good friend. A good friend is not someone that says, you're the best. A good friend is someone who shares with you, how to refine yourself. That was always the essence of a real Hasidic Farbrengen, was where people sat together and they were open enough to hear how to improve. That was the whole idea. Any questions, Chevra? Yes, Yoni.
So the Rebbe keeps repeating this Avos Atzmai idea.
Yeah.
So how is that different than Gaiva? Because don't we know that all the root of all evil, all sin is from Gaiva, right? So
yeah.
Is that the same kind of thing? Or
it's the same idea, but much more refined. There's coarse and grub Gaiva. I'm a big shot. Avos Atzmai is much more refined, but it's still self-love. In other words, when a person justifies many of the things they do, when really others would say it's outrageous, they aren't necessarily Bali Gaiva, boasting and bragging, but to themselves they feel, like they're doing it right. So you're right. It's a more refined sense of Gaiva. But Gaiva in Chazal And community has, the feeling of more ostentatious. Avas Atzmai is much more refined. It's quiet but deadly. It's that type of issue. Hillel, do you have any words you could add to Yoni's question?
And all I know, the only thing I would say is that because it's so, it tends to be so unconscious, so outside of our awareness. It seems to be the point he's emphasizing, that that becomes one of the major obstacles to learning. And open-mindedness is because of our hidden biases.
Yes, but he's not talking so much about learning. He's talking about character improvement. Remember,
right.
Character.
I think, but he's going in the direction of learning.
Right.
Yeah.
Well. What do you mean he's going in the direction? He's going in the direction of improving character.
Since it's a mimer on Chinuch, I'm just assuming that's where he's going. That he's sort of setting up the psychology of learning and the obstacles by describing the obstacles to it.
Okay. Well, let's see how it develops. Have a good day. We'll see everyone tomorrow. Zay gesund. Shalom. Bye-bye.